Hola a todos. How is everybody doing? I'm so excited to talk about one of my absolute most favorite things. Hola!
2 minutos.
Minutos. You got it.
Podemos recibir a la gente, dejar que
Okay,
entren.
perfecto. Le estaba diciendo a todos that I'm so excited. It's one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. I'm also so excited that I know someone who's as passionate about this as I am, and as I like to call it, as intense about it as I am, because I think it's just such an important topic. I feel like there's still a lot of fear around it and a lot of uncertainty. And in a way, I feel like there's a lot of moms either doing it or wanting to do it, but it's still kind of like low key. And if they're doing it, it's still with a lot of doubt or like not knowing what's going to happen in the future or kind of, ¿cómo se dice? Como figuring it out as they go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a place to make this a long-term plan. Like there's a big opportunity to know confidently that you're doing the right thing. And I think that that's what I kind of want to do here, because I know that you and I, Kaila, feel strongly about what we're doing in homeschooling in Spanish. And so I think it's really important to kind of, especially from your point of view as a linguist, to really put those doubts at ease and really make parents feel comfortable with that decision. So thank you everybody for joining. And are you ready, Kaila, you think? You ready to roll?
1 minuto. But
Okay.
do you want to tell people, I mean, I can talk, I just can't hold the phone.
That's fine, that's fine.
Do you want to tell people there's the little question mark?
Oh, I see it. Yeah, the bottom right corner. Yeah, I see it.
So instead of putting questions into the chat, that might get lost. If they click on that and put questions there, then we'll have it all in one spot.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. That sounds great. So do you guys, there's a little question mark in the bottom right corner. So just feel free to put your questions in there. A lot of the questions that I received on stories, I incorporated into our questions today. So we should be
That's right.
touching on some of those or a lot of those.
That's what I
But if
figured.
there aren't, we should just feel free to hit the question mark. So I want to start with something that I think is really important, and you and I talk about it all the time, which is setting expectations and deciding what level of the language we want our children to have, right? Because I think you and I always say we want our children to be able to go to another, like a Spanish speaking country, and pretty much like belong there in a sense, right? Like pretty much feel like they're almost from there, in the way that they speak Spanish and communicate with other people there. And that might not be the goal for everybody. They might just want their children to be conversational. Then some people might just want their children to understand Spanish but not speak it, and that's okay with them. And so I think it's important to start by kind of level setting in that, what level of Spanish do you want your child to have? I think that's really important. And deciding that, and once you have that in your mind, then I think everything else kind of falls into place, especially when it comes to homeschooling. Um, can you tell us why? I know why I chose it, but why did you guys choose to educate your kids in Spanish and do Spanish immersion homeschooling?
I'm pulling into my driveway.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. I'll start.
Yeah.
We decided to do it. We always knew we wanted to homeschool, right? I went to school in Mexico my whole life, so my whole entire education was in Spanish. And I knew I wanted my children to have that level of proficiency in the language, because what I see a lot and what I see happen a lot is that children will speak it, but be more likely to lose it if they enter school, or even if they're homeschooled in English. I feel like that connection with the parent who has always, or the parents who have always spoken Spanish, kind of gets eroded by starting to teach in English in a sense. And I didn't want that to happen. I knew that I wanted to exercise what I call the freedom of homeschooling, right? Because that's part of the reason why we do it. And so I knew from the get-go, if I'm going to do, like, I can't even see myself teaching my children in Spanish. Like, I speak Spanish to my kids, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Well, with that, it's almost like even more so for homeschool families. Because the families who are Spanish, only Spanish at home, like, como familia hablamos español, este es nuestro idioma de la casa, those families can send their kids off to a school and say, okay, like, I'm not having to break character. Like I'm not having to break
Yeah, in a sense,
out of my language pattern with my kid, and like it's very clearly delineated at school. I know they're going to school, they're getting English. Like I can stick to Spanish at home, but for
which
the
doesn't
home,
take away from the language loss, right? If
the
they are
language
going to
loss.
school, right?
I mean that's the clear point in where we see linguistically when do kids change their language preference if they are in a fully Spanish speaking household. When does it change that their preferences switch? It's the entrance at school. So yeah, that's already a huge factor. But then for the homeschool family, our language relationship is in Spanish. So to then like for I just have never been able to understand, or like I couldn't imagine myself being like, okay, but we're gonna homeschool in English. Like we're gonna all of a sudden switch our entire relationship that we have together, and I'm gonna teach you when it's teaching hours in English, but then we're gonna go back to Spanish. I don't think it
Thank
would
you.
work
Yeah,
for
correct.
us. So
Correct.
for me, my like you said, my plan was always to homeschool. I was homeschooled, for those who don't know. I was homeschooled second grade through graduation. Um, and so in my mind, I always knew I wanted to homeschool my kids. And then as the bilingualism thing like became increasingly more important for me as I, grew into adulthood and then started thinking about my own kids, I already knew I'm speaking Spanish to them. And then when we homeschool, we're gonna homeschool in Spanish. Like it was just a clear path for
An
me.
extension of your relationship with your
Right.
children in a sense, right? Because that's also another part of homeschooling. Like it is kind of it's woven into your life in a sense. So
Right.
that's also where I struggle. And I see in forums, and I know we talked about it all the time, where even moms who don't speak English are trying to find these programs or trying to wrap their head around like how I want to homeschool and I know it in my heart, but like how am I going to do that in English? And I'm always sitting there like, but why?
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't do it, right? Like,
Easy
just teach
answer.
them in the language. Yeah, just teach them the language that you know. Like, why is that? And I feel like for some people, it feels like such a stretch. And I've wondered: is it resources? Is it fear? And so I want to kind of touch on those things today and really go through one of the biggest questions that we get all the time, which is, and one of the biggest fears, I want to call it too, if we homeschool in Spanish, what happens to English, right? So let's talk about it from the linguistic point of view. What happens to just conversational English if I'm in my household we speak Spanish? In my case, my husband speaks English, so I like to say I feel guilty because I can't give them a full immersion experience in my home, but I can do it through homeschool, right? And the hours
Yeah.
that my husband's working. And even when my husband's here, we speak Spanish. Among me and my kids speak Spanish to each other. But what does that look like for parents where both parents speak Spanish and then the child is being homeschooled, immersed in Spanish? What happens linguistically to conversation? Let's just stick to conversational English for
Mm-hmm.
now, because we see those like freakouts. I feel like at like 4 or 5 years old, where parents are like, "Oh my gosh, they're not speaking English," putting them in school so that they learn, even though it wasn't in
Yeah.
the plan.
Or even at 2 and 3, like the fear is
Yes,
already
that
coming.
too. Yes.
Um, yes, and like just as an aside, you've been super successful as an only one parent Spanish speaking parent household. You've been super successful. So that's like inspirational to people who are in similar boats. But yeah, so I always think of my kids as pretty extreme examples. So when I hear people that are like, oh my gosh, but what about English? If we homeschool, I want to homeschool and I would continue to use Spanish like I already do with my kids, but then where is English ever going to come from? Because with that lack of perspective, it could seem like to FaceTime me.
Oh, that's funny.
Um, I'm like,
That's hilarious.
that's a work with an Instagram live. So with the lack of perspective, it can seem daunting of where would English come from? I get the concern. I get the theoretical. It's a valid question. However, what we see play.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just hold on.
Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry.
There we go. You're
I
fine.
had to text him. Um,
You
what
said
we
what we
see
see playing out.
what we see play out in the real world is not a fear that needs to be had, because English will work itself in no matter what. The dominant language, assuming we're talking about an English dominant country, the
Mm-hmm.
US, England. Australia. English is going to work its in no matter what, work its way in no matter what. And from a linguist, as a linguist, I can say what we know to be true is that kids are always going to be dominant speakers of the language of their community. Maybe not at 3, maybe not even at 6, but eventually a child growing up in the English speaking context is going to be a dominant speaker of English. Not just fluent, not just learn it here and there, not just learn it okay. They will be a dominant speaker, which, like, even our kids. And that kind of sounds like, wait, I don't like that. No, like, we're working so
I
hard on
know, right?
Spanish.
Like, it's like, no, stop.
But it's just a linguistic fact. So it's almost like
Yeah.
inescapable. What we are trying to do through how intentional we are through Spanish homeschooling
Dominance shift, really.
is trying to keep the balance as much as possible and like prolong their shift and like them fully preferring English. We're just trying to push that down the road a little bit longer to continue giving them a good base for more time. However, it is going to happen. Like, eventually, what language will my daughter be most comfortable speaking with her friends? English. Probably even in between my kids as siblings, as adults, they're probably going to default to English, which is crazy.
Which is crazy right now because I think both of our kids speak English, Spanish to each other.
Exactly.
So it's going to be such a weird shift for me, but.
Truly. So when you kind of take that big step back and understand the perspective and understand that as a linguistic fact, it's kind of reassuring. Like, okay, so even if I do nothing, English will still make its way in. Yes.
What do I say all the time? English never gets lost in an English-speaking country. It just doesn't. Like, there's no way to get away from it. Right. In a sense.
It has a very strong self-preservation instinct.
Absolutely.
So it's like, no, I'm the dominant language here. Let's not forget. But like what I was saying is I consider my family a pretty extreme example because my husband and I speak Spanish to each other, not just that we each speak Spanish. We speak Spanish to each other. So our home is truly all Spanish all the time. My daughter didn't get any English exposure from like 0 to 3. And then when she finally did, it was like in tiny little bits. Like, her English exposure, even to this day, is very, very minimal percentage-wise. Like, our co-ops are in Spanish. Our friends, all her best friends, she plays with them in Spanish.
That's so cool.
His side of the family is within driving distance, my husband. So we see them often. They're all fully Spanish. Like, when we hang out, it's all Spanish. So my kids have had a very extreme example of Spanish-only upbringing in an English country. And yet still my daughter, between those ages of 3 and 6, with her tiny little input of English here and there trickled into her life, has learned it fluently. And so she can defend herself, as they say,
like she
in both languages. Yeah. Perfect. I mean, her Spanish is her preferred language, but I could like send her off to a camp in English, like a VBS type camp or whatever, and she would be perfectly fine. Like, no English anxiety, or like, she understands. Okay, Spanish is still my stronger language. She still prefers if we go to the movies and the movie's in English, she's kind of like,
she's kind of watch this. Yeah, that's what happens
at home. That's what happens to my in Spanish. Yeah. But like, so she's aware that she's still working on her English, but it's not like,
not through her parents.
and I never, exactly. So if we've never even a tiny bit introduced English, like, it's never had to come from us, and she still learned it with a small amount of exposure. I think most parents who are asking that question and are a little bit fearful of, but where will English come from? Those kids are already getting more input than my daughter is, probably, because she's an extreme example. So your kids really will learn it. Because if my daughter can with her small input, your kids can with small input too.
I want to ask you.
Wait, one thing. Just to wrap up this is that it's like a what's it called? Like, survival instinct. So biologically, we are wired to learn language, and we are wired to learn the language of our community from a survival standpoint. Because, like, if you think about like tribes, like back in the day when it was just like cavemen learning language or whatever, like, everyone had their clan for lack of a better terms. And if you're perceived as an outsider, immediately you're out. So people have to learn they have their community's language. They learn it as a survival instinct so that they're on the in crowd. But then they're also adaptable, because if someone was to go and like infiltrate a different group of people,
they would learn it.
They would really learn it. Like, if you're around someone who speaks with Colombian Spanish, don't you find yourself like even like starting to
pana and yes, absolutely.
Or just like 100%. The cadence changes. So we're super adaptable. And as a survival instinct, our kids are going to learn the language of years. It's just going to happen.
I want to talk about what Spanish immersion homeschooling looks like so that we can go into, well, what about all of those academic terms in English? Because for me, Spanish immersion homeschooling is literally learning every subject in Spanish, right? So we teach math in English, we teach science in English, everything that other parents would be teaching as they homeschool, we teach it in Spanish. And it's the same thing for you, correct?
Yeah, that's what we do. Yep.
So from your point of view as a linguist, what happens, right? Because if you're like me, we're planning on doing it for the long haul, correct? Like we're planning on continuing to teach in Spanish. And when we get to those tricky subjects like, American history and things like that, like I'm still planning on figuring out how to teach that in Spanish. Like the names will be in English, but it will be taught in Spanish. And so I want to ask you, how does that work? How are they going to learn those in English?
Well, before we even talk about the mechanics of how, I love the example that you brought up in your post just the other day about people praising the Spanish immersion schooling model when it's a school that they're sending their kids to. Like, yes, my child is getting Spanish immersion and they're getting all their subjects in Spanish and this and that. So the same concept, it's what we're doing at home. We're just it makes more sense from a family dynamic to do it in Spanish. And it's already a concept people are paying big bucks to send their kids to. So it's not like we're doing something so out of the ordinary. We are just continuing that same model that exists in schools.
But do you agree with me that I see more como ganas or more less fear when they're little, and then for the long term or as a child enters elementary and those years, that's when the freakouts are. That's when it's we have to put English in here because I don't want them to learn about gravity in Spanish. And I'm they're not relearning it. You know what I mean?
And that is also when Spanish immersion schools typically start going fully 50-50 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's just a lack of examples to go off of. People haven't seen it done. But you, like you said, you did your K through 12, let's say, schooling in Mexico. And are you okay? Are you surviving?
Did that work out? Did you think of? I spoke no English and moved here, and I want to say I had months of transition. I did my senior year here, and that was what was tough? I had spent that last summer before we moved here reading books, and I remember grabbing Call of the Wild and books like that.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and highlighting the words I didn't understand and looking them up in a dictionary. And then we moved here, and I got to school, and people would talk to me, and I would be like, I have no idea what they're saying to me. And I would just look at them, and I was like, what? And so I think if I was okay, and I was 17 years old, and I did all of my schooling in Spanish, and I had zero exposure to English, I truly believe that my children are going to be okay growing up here and learning everything in Spanish. I have zero doubt in my mind that everything I teach them, they will know in English by the time they get to high school.
Right, because it's also just naturally going to be infiltrating itself. So I said that my kids are an extreme example, and my daughter's 6.5 and she's learned English without any intervention on my point. Your example is another extreme example. You did all of your schooling and then were thrown into senior year in a completely different country, different language. That's an extreme example. And again, you were fine. You
truly,
you figured it out.
It's a survival thing. It's exactly what you said, because I switched to English with my sister, with whom I had spoken only Spanish my whole life. And I learned everything I needed to learn through osmosis, because that's truly how it goes, and through context.
Yeah.
And I had a full scholarship to a university by the time I graduated, right?
That's amazing.
And so it's and then I did my whole, I think I did 5 years at university, just fine, seriously. And
in English, right?
In English,
that's amazing.
Correct. Yeah, there was zero Spanish in my life after that point. And so I struggle with people that say, well, how are they going to learn these things in English? Because I think what they're forgetting is that their children aren't starting from scratch when they have to reattach the labels to those terms.
Also, we have to remember, what are we prepping our kids for? Are we prepping our kids for an eternal academic content? context. We're not prepping them forever and ever to be in these like academic classes. So much of, we talk about this all the time. How much of what you learned in high school do you really use on a daily basis?
Truly. That's a whole like
So
homeschooling at large. I feel like
we're prepping them
would
for the world. Like
yeah.
they're learning the world concepts and how to interact in the world. They're learning it simultaneously in our home language, and then they're out and about. They're interacting. They're at playgrounds. They're at libraries. They're going to field trips and stuff. So they're still getting English, how to survive in the world and be a good, productive member of society. But to ease people's minds, and if they're like, no, but really, how will they learn about gravity? How will they learn about photosynthesis? How will they learn about times tables? I love to just like recenter on the idea of we learn concepts. We understand things at a conceptual level. When we're learning something in school, the brain is really processing concepts, concepts, concepts. And then we're attaching words to it as labels, and we are like storing it as labels in the language we're learning it in. But the brain, the big work that we're doing, like on a neurological level, brain process level, is the conceptual understanding.
The reading comprehension, the mathematical
All
operations,
of
the
it.
concept of gravity, like we're saying, the concept of how the solar system works, like you name it. I mean, truly, if you take a step back, all of those are like concepts, is what they are,
Concepts. They're being
right? And
stored,
so
yeah.
how are our kids, let's just put it this way, how are kids who are going to be Spanish immersion homeschooled in for the long haul, how are they going to learn those labels, or how do you see your child learning those labels in English?
Well, it's also the same thing about like someone who moves here from another country. Okay, what if they don't know the planet names perfectly in English? Like, how much is that tripping them up in their normal everyday life? And
True,
the
very true.
moment, the moment it's important, because okay, all of a sudden I'm at a science camp and all these kids know the planet names, and I only know them in Spanish. The moment it becomes important, that kid is gonna adapt real fast. Like,
Oh,
oh,
real quick.
okay,
Oh,
now I
yeah,
know that.
I've seen this. I have seen this
Yeah,
happen. Yes, 1,000%. Well, I mean, and look at me. I had to, and I learned them quickly. But even as a child, I mean, even more so as a child, I feel like I've seen my kid come up to me and be like,
adapt.
"What's ¿Cómo se dice 100 in English? 100. Okay, 100, blah blah
Yeah,
blah. Done.
exactly,
Like
exactly.
moving on, but never
And
forgot.
and because English has more social currency, they're able to, like in their world, in their mind's eye, they're able to learn the label for that so quick. Like maybe it took several repetitions the first time they learned the concept in Spanish to understand the words, because the concept was new, the words were still new. As soon as they're then in a context where they need to know that in English, they already have the concept down. They're like, done, I already understand this. And oh, the social currency is high for me to know this word in English, so I'm going to learn it real
And
quick.
I'm gonna remember this.
Yes. So it takes like way less iterations of hearing that word. A lot of times there's so much transfer even in like all the scientific terms. They're all Latin based. They're all Greek based. So
Yes, so
the words all
similar.
sound
Absolutely,
similar. And
absolutely.
even if it doesn't, have you ever had a like you've had a conversation or something and then you try to think back, what language was that in? Or you listen to a song or you listen to a poem or something and you're just not paying attention that much. So the concept sinks into your head, and then you later on were like,
What was it?
was that in English or was that in Spanish? And you really don't know. Like someone asked me, did your husband when he proposed to you, was it in English or in Spanish?
Oh,
And I was like, I mean, I assume Spanish. I don't know why he would just break out a character and use English, but I could not remember like the
that's funny.
exact words because it was just the emotion of the moment and the concept of like,
Yeah,
yes, I'm committing to you. So
funny.
I was like, I don't know. Or here's one more example, just to solidify this for people. I want you to imagine yourself getting into your car and putting on your seatbelt. Like, think through the process of how to get into your car and put on a seatbelt. Close your eyes, think through that for a sec. Okay. Were you like, oh, first I have to open my door with my right hand and slide into my seat. Then I take my right hand, reach over my left shoulder, bring this band down to a mechanism that locks.
No, you just
No,
do
you
it.
pictured it, you imagined it, like,
Yes,
and when you
absolutely.
do it, you just do it. So
Yeah, you
the
just
brain
do it.
stores the concepts. We just attach labels later on, but like we're adaptable what labels we're using. So yeah. So the kids, like, when will they learn the planet names? I don't want them to have to learn it once
When
they're
they
in
need
science
to,
camp.
immediately and quickly is
But
the
if people are like,
answer.
I don't want them to be in that moment where they don't know it. Okay, then like when they're 12 and they're interested in that, they'll grab a book. They'll grab a
And
book and
they'll
they
well
can
that's where I stress,
self-teach.
yes, this is where I stress access so much, right? So for me, I teach my kids how to read in Spanish. Do I plan on teaching how to read in English? Not particularly. I personally plan on outsourcing that because, again, right, it is not a language that I speak with my children directly, and I have no desire, not because I reject English by any means, but because I
Right.
have no desire to um, interrupt that relationship in
Right.
Spanish between me and my children. That's plainly the reason. And so I plan on outsourcing them learning because they're gonna have to learn all of the exceptions. And I understand it's like a complex, it has complexities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, once our children can read in English, what are
They
they going to see at the library, please? When they start going and sitting on the computer and like doing the little apps they have a library, they're all in English. Like, let's not kid ourselves. The all of the books that they're going to have access to for the most part are going to be in English. I mean,
right.
even I read the books in English and translate them, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I know for a fact that that's what they're going to have access to. So to me, in my mind, it's like, why double down on that? Like, who else is going to teach them the Spanish if not us? They're going to have access to the English labels.
Exactly. The world is their oyster. They're gonna have the rest of their entire life living here in the U.S. That I mean, if that's where they live, that's the plan. So they're gonna be able to continue learning all the things that they've just built the base on that we're giving them. We're giving them the base, and it's gonna come easy because it's the community language. And like you said, especially with English, the access is incredible. All of the resources come out of the English speaking world. Not all of them, but like the majority of what you
Yeah,
find comes out of the
yeah.
English speaking world. So the access is huge. The social currency of English is already giving it such an upper edge. The reverse is not true, though. If we hold off on Spanish in the younger years, they're not going to have that ease to then go pick it up in the later years. So it's like on us. If we don't do it, who will? And if we don't do it now, then when?
Absolutely. What do you think, and from your point of view, the benefits are on doing what we are doing for the long haul? Because I think it's important for parents to hear that because I still see a lot of not only fear, like I told you, but kind of like holding back or like having that pressure of like, well, I mean, they need English. So what are the benefits? Like, why would I want to do this?
Do it long term. I mean, I'll admit at the beginning of when I was starting this road of homeschooling, even I had the thought of like, okay, well, at least through second grade, we'll do all Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't so much, I think a lot of people have that fear just because they think that that's the point that you need to then start
Like
introducing
they
more
need
English.
English.
For me, it was just like I didn't have resources at the time. This was years ago. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Aniela was not even in her school years whatsoever because she's just now starting. Um, but my fear was more of just like a resource thing. But now that the curriculum that I use has all of the grades, like that part doesn't matter. So my plan is to long term do this.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that you mentioned outsourcing English
Literacy,
spelling,
yeah.
or you mentioned something, or maybe I was just thinking about it, like there's some poetry or some books that I want her to read in English
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah,
It's for us, it's just going to be treated like a separate subject then,
sure.
or we can synthesize it in with the language arts that we're doing,
Kind of like the way that you teach, like a lot
a
of
foreign
people teach
language.
Spanish as a foreign
Right,
language.
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
So I'm
to
not like
compartmentalize it in a way.
exactly.
Yeah,
And then we'll probably, I mean, she and I, our language relationship is so much Spanish. I feel like we'll still discuss things. We might be discussing English literature in this, like, reading
yeah, at large.
whatever,
Yeah.
but in Spanish. Like, we'll still be discussing it, or both, like Spanglish. But yeah, I don't want to like just switch over. It would be like, okay, but now for this section of schooling, we are going to start looking at English spelling patterns. And honestly, this is like years down the road. I don't plan on systematically teaching that. I'm going to let it organically happen. Like this happens with you. You just posted a reel that was so great about your son decoding the words that are
It
written
was
in English,
crazy.
decoding with what he knows in Spanish, and then immediately knowing what it was in English. That happens with my daughter. She'll be reading like a sign or something while we're out and about.
And she
Um,
can.
and she can. And if she can't, then she gets hung up on it, and I tell her that, okay, well, in English is a little bit different, so that
Mm-hmm,
word
mm-hmm,
actually says
mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. But systematically teaching all those spelling rules, we as homeschoolers, the beauty of it is we don't have like a hard line, a cutoff, a milestone where they need to be reading that by second grade, or they need to be by the end of first grade knowing all these spelling patterns in English. As long as we're following their like developmental pattern and like what they're ready for, teaching what they're ready to learn when they're ready to learn it, That's the whole beauty of homeschooling, that I don't have to rush into making sure she knows the OUGH by age 7. We can do 7.5. We can do, just as it naturally kind of, I can see
The
that she's ready for
progression,
it.
yeah,
We'll do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, totally. Like
Uh,
you have that freedom is what I always like to say. I struggle with, I see, granted, and I want to caveat by saying there are states that have explicit language of instruction. There are very few, but there are states that require them. Oh, somebody just asked, are you teaching them in English? No, we only teach them in Spanish. That's what we're talking about when you do Spanish immersion homeschooling only. For everybody that just joined us or that is joining us, we're talking about schooling our children long term only in Spanish. Um, but it's really, there are caveats, and by there are state regulations.
yeah.
And I give a lot of credit to the moms that are
Or
having
navigate.
to teach, for example, English language arts, for example, in California, because they have to, in a sense. And I am in Arkansas, and we don't have any rules, but we do have testing that we have to do. And I just posted a video about that too. We just did our first test with my son, and I was able to help them through read the instructions, like translate the instructions for him. Would he be ready if I just read them in English, or like the machine read them in English? I don't think he'd be ready at a developmental level to take a test on his own because of his age, not because of the
Yeah.
language, if that
Right.
makes sense.
He's young.
Because I know that somebody commented on the post, they were like, well, I'm not even able to be in the room. And I said, well, how old do you have to be to test in your state? Because there's no way I'm leaving a kindergartner by themselves in the room anyway. And she said like second, third grade. At that point, I think, and I put that on the post that I made recently too, is our goal is
Developmentally.
independence,
Yeah.
right? Our goal is independence no matter what. In learning, our goal is independence in the testing. So I think by the time a child gets to third grade, do I think my son is going to be able to take a test by themselves? Like, no doubt. I think 100% my child will be ready for that, as long as like it's been read to him. Like he's going to, at a comprehensive level, understand. And what we're talking about is he's going to know these concepts, right? Like he was being asked about geometry, he was being asked addition and subtraction, like things that he knows them in Spanish, but it doesn't matter, because if he knows them in one language, he automatically knows the concepts, and
Right.
that's what
Right.
counts on the test, right? He
Right.
can look at a multiple choice and pick the answer. So
Yeah. And in that context, you prep them for it. Like taking a test can be scary, and even for a monolingual child. So you would just kind of walk them through the expectations and like practice it and prep for them for it. It doesn't mean you have to overhaul your entire schooling into a new language. That
absolutely.
doesn't work. I don't feel like I answered your question though. We started talking about something, but the last question that you had, the last bullet pointed question, it was like, what are the benefits? Oh yeah, of doing it
Oh, the
long term.
benefits, that's right. The benefits, as it refers to the minority language, to do what we're doing long term.
The benefit is you ask anyone, second language speaker of Spanish, heritage language speaker of Spanish, everyone feels like we have these big vocabulary gaps. Even if we're like fully bilingual, there's vocabulary gaps because we've only lived our life in one language at a time. Or like what I'm saying is a lot of times people will be fully fluent, they speak Spanish at home all the time, but then they go to school only they speak Spanish at home.
They
Go to
go to
school
school in
in
English,
English.
and they
They
don't
go to
learn
work
those things ever.
in
There's no
English. And
equivalency. Yeah.
and so you want to ask them questions about, like, they go and visit their cousins in a country that only speaks Spanish, in Mexico, and they can't even like describe to their cousins what they do for their job because they've never used those words.
Yeah.
So and the reason is because most of the like higher level language skills are being done in the community language in English. So most kids who are raised bilingual, they can talk about the house just fine. They can talk about the weather. They can ask how people are. They can talk about family members. But then into any other domain, they start to feel unconfident. What's the word?
Yeah.
Insecure in their language skills in any domain other than just kind of the basic life
The
domains.
thing, I mean, honestly, any domain except what they use all the time, which is the
Right.
home, feelings, in a sense, the common things like that, like the
Which
things we
makes
use.
sense. We
Yeah,
understand.
absolutely.
We understand why that happens. But what we're trying to do is give our kids an upper leg, a leg up. Me and my idioms, see,
Upper leg.
bilingual brain, an upper leg. Uh, we're trying to give our kids a leg up in preserving their Spanish, and we're preserving it longer by homeschooling in Spanish long term. And we are also giving them those harder to find concepts in Spanish where they could easily just default to English. And they're going to learn those concepts and words in English because it's their peers' language. But they're not just by default going to learn those concepts in language or vocabulary in Spanish. That's not going to come as a default. The English versions will come as a default. And if we just say, okay, only through second grade, and then third grade and beyond, we're going to start doing way more English subjects, which, it depends on the family too. It depends on your goals. It depends on your language ability. It depends on the access you have to resources. But for the family who can continue and make it your goal to just do Spanish immersion schooling the whole time, or in high school as you start to outsource classes, fine. But like your relationship stays. I'm the Spanish
Intact.
teacher,
Yeah.
and we're doing what we can in Spanish.
Yeah.
There's no plan to just
Interruption.
switch over to English for some arbitrary reason. The benefits is that you're continuing to give them those. You're helping to fill in vocabulary gaps that would otherwise form, and you're also just preserving the language longer. Which to me, vocabulary gaps exist for any bilingual, no matter what. So that's not like
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
that's not even the thing that I'm like striving against. What I'm striving for is protecting and preserving my child's fluency, my children's fluency. So that's my biggest pro is the longer term commitment means longer term protecting their fluency and growing with them. And I don't know. Yeah.
So let's talk about the other side of this coin, right? Because this is the most common thing we see. We see all of these moms homeschooling bilingually, right? And I don't like that term for the simple fact that that means they feel that they have to teach in Spanish and in English, right? And I talk very openly about this, and I try to deter people from doing that because, and tell me if I'm incorrect, it's like English already has all the infrastructure in the whole world pretty much outside of your door. And so the second that you work this hard to establish this relationship with your child, and then you decide to start breaking up your day as much as you do think it can be compartmentalized, especially when they're little.
Mm-hmm.
Now it like floods your child because not only is it now just less hours of your day or like a smaller portion of your day is in Spanish, but also it's like now you're speaking English to them.
You're right. The
And so
imbalance
now
happens.
they're like, oh, that's easier. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Why would we, you know what I
Why
mean?
are we
Like,
not doing this all the
yeah,
time?
what are we doing? And
Yeah.
so I see a lot of those moms come back and start writing in forums like a year later, months later, like, hey, my child's not responding back to me. What happened? And so tell us from your point of view if you agree
Well,
with that.
well, two things that I'm thinking again, just to reiterate that like it depends on the family and what they have in their attainability or what's actually attainable for them language wise if they can do all Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
But let's assume
We're
we're
gonna
talking
talk.
to
Yeah,
them.
let's assume that they're like, yeah, let's assume that
Yes.
they can, and then we're gonna talk about that because I want to touch on that point too.
Yeah. But let's assume it's the family that absolutely can stick to all Spanish. They
Yeah,
just are feeling like that maybe they shouldn't, and they're feeling like I should be
fear.
using more English. So if it's just strictly fear based, absolutely. The answer is no. Like you don't have to give into you don't have to give into
Don't.
the fear and then introduce English just from a fear perspective. Or even a convenience perspective, fight against it a little bit. It is inconvenient. We are swimming upstream in raising bilingual kids and in homeschooling bilingual or homeschooling in Spanish. It's already like we already have accepted that it's a challenge. So yeah,
Absolutely, we're doing it. We decided.
we're gonna do it anyways. From a
Yeah.
convenience aspect, push back. Like yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more easy and convenient to find the resources in English. push back. So don't let fear, don't let just convenience be the thing that deters you. Definitely don't let outside voices saying, oh, but you guys aren't doing such and such in English. Like, I don't know. Is that a good idea?
That is, yeah.
We're
How
telling
are
you.
they? How are they gonna learn?
Are they
How are
gonna,
they gonna learn to say
they're
it?
not gonna
Because
know the
all of the
planets.
other kids are saying it. All the kids know how to say it, and I just
Yeah.
wanna be like,
My question is, do the other kids all speak fluent Spanish?
yeah.
Why are we comparing our bilingual kids to, yeah, fluent monolingual kids? Why?
And again, I mean, you and I talk about this. Why are we homeschooling? So that we don't have to do that in the first place, let alone compare our children to monolingual children or whatever. But we do this so that we don't have to benchmark our children against any child.
Exactly.
Correct? And
Yeah.
so why let that, I mean, you have to start your homeschool career just knowing, right? Not only am I not going to let that be a factor that influences me in a child to child, concept to concept basis, but also in a, my child is learning all of this and they're bilingual. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. You know what I
That's
mean? They're
already,
learning
yeah.
it in a whole other language.
Right.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
And it goes back to the whole beauty of homeschooling is being able to tailor the education to the child, the individuality. Like we're not having to teach all the kids the same way. We're not having to have them all learn the exact same way and sitting in the exact same position. Like, so yes, we're allowed to then tailor our homeschool then to the language aspect also. Um, but the other thing I wanted to say, like you said, oh, we're going to start splitting up our day into English. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same reason why we don't recommend families unnecessarily
Splitting up.
splitting language. Like, oh, well, I'm the Spanish speaking parent, but let me make sure that I'm still giving him enough English time. Like, I'm going to do
Forcing the
some
one parent one
English.
language. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, like, again, it depends on the family. If that's the way that the chips fall, like, one parent does speak one language, the other
That's
parent does speak
me.
the other language.
I mean, yeah,
You
I
have
have
to
no choice. Yeah.
Right, you have to go with what like the
Yeah.
cards you're dealt with. But
But forcing that when both, I see it here in my
or
community. Both parents speak Spanish, like your family. And then they're like, well, I'm making my husband speak English. Oh, I'm going to start speaking English. My
right,
husband's going to be the Spanish. And I'm like,
that's what I
why?
was gonna
Oh,
say.
because how are they going to
Or
learn it?
or or if you as an OPOL family where you're the Spanish speaker, your husband's the English speaker, if you were like, oh, we got to make sure that we're being equal, and I'm only doing 50% of the talking to the kids, and you're doing 50% of the talking because it has to be equal. No, like English has such a pull as it is. We need to continue to give Spanish a boost when we can. We know it's worthy of it. We know it's
Absolutely.
important enough, but like in our kids' eyes, quickly they're seeing that person speaks English, that my neighbors, my friends, my this, that. We have to continue to be the one boosting Spanish because if we don't, the world is not telling them Spanish is worthy of their time and attention.
The
So,
opposite, if anything.
right. So that's what we're
The
doing is we're
opposite.
just like we are almost like fabricating in our home this big communicative need for Spanish. We're fabricating an immersion environment, and that not in a bad way. Fabricating like we are like the creators of
Doing
this
what we
immersion
can.
environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, no, no doubt. No doubt. I want to talk about, you were just saying, what a family can do, right? And I think there's also fear in that. I think that's one of the factors that might influence or deter somebody from doing this because, well, I'm not a native speaker, which is completely understandable, or I am a native speaker, but maybe my schooling wasn't
Right.
in Spanish, or I moved here when I was young, so I did all my years of schooling in English, so I don't know those terms. And what I personally want to tell those people is that, and we talked about this too, is like we're teaching our children how to learn, right? We homeschool because we are teaching our children how to learn. That's at least our goal in homeschooling, I think. And there's so much that we learn alongside them, regardless of whether it's in English or in Spanish, right? So in my mind, it's like
Yes.
there are resources now that you can rely on to learn those things alongside your child and teach them how to learn. There's nothing wrong with, oh, you know what? I don't know that word. Hold on, let me look that up. Or we
Oh
have
yeah.
information at our fingertips now. So I just don't want that to be a deterrent. Like, well, I didn't go to school here, so I'm just more comfortable in English. Or there's going to be a level of pushing yourself, but I think as homeschoolers, like there's already a level of that anyway because we are going to come up against topics of conversation, topics that we're teaching that we either haven't learned very well, that we weren't very good at maybe while we were in school. or that we just don't know those terms in Spanish. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning that with our children, I feel like. The same way we're talking about those labels attached or whatever, it's the same thing. It's like they are we are almost relearning those labels. If we went to school here and we learned them all in English, all we're doing is relabeling those terms in Spanish for ourselves.
Truly. Well, that's also, so my mom, can you still hear me if I walk too far away? Okay. My husband grabbed the toddler. My mom and like so many homeschool moms, when I was being homeschooled, they all used to like marvel together at how much they were learning with us. And this is a monolingual context, but they were like, oh my gosh, aren't you like learning so many new concepts or things that you briefly remember from, or like vaguely remember from high school, but like, are you relearning all these things? And they were always like, oh my gosh, yes. Like I had no idea about this in history, or I had no idea about this in science. Because it's just like giving it a second pass or a third pass or whatever. Even in a monolingual situation, you have to kind of relearn a lot. Or parents talk about it all the time. Like, I don't remember these math concepts. I'm having to relearn it to teach it to my kid. So I know, because I'm a non-native speaker of Spanish, I know I was schooled in English. So I know there's a lot of things as I start teaching my daughter that I have to learn, not the concepts. I already have the concepts up here.
That's right.
I'm going to have to learn the labels of like how to talk about long division. I'm going to have to learn the labels, especially in science and history, of what things are called in Spanish, but the concepts are there and I'll be learning alongside of her and it'll be a quick learn for me. It's like, okay, I learned that this is how you say number line. Now I know it. But yeah. So I yeah.
See, I didn't know any in English.
Really? Well, true. Like I'm saying, in a monolingual context, it's the same. But definitely, I can super sympathize with those families that are like, I don't feel that comfortable in my Spanish. I'm not a native speaker. And obviously, you can't like go too far out beyond your limits. Stick to your limits, but push yourself. I know that personally with Bilinguitos, we have a lot of families that are non-native mom, native speaking dad. And the moms are like doing a lot of heavy lifting and they're doing amazing to raise their kids bilingually. But I get that their hesitation is like, I can't full send Spanish, like go fully into raising or homeschooling in Spanish because I don't have that language there. So I understand it, but I'm also there and I'm having to push myself and learn things so that I can continue as my daughter gets older and grows in bigger school subjects. To continue to support her and be the teacher.
Yeah. I want to address something that's happening in the comments because I'm seeing this more and more and more. And it's driving parents to do things that are, in my mind, necessary, but I understand how it feels because I've been there. There are a lot of parents whose kids are like what I call the Spanish only stage, where they're only speaking Spanish still. And they go to extracurriculars, and I keep seeing this, like I said, more and more. And the coaches get frustrated because the child doesn't understand them, or the child gets uneasy, or they start, they'll get overwhelmed, or they get they start like acting out because they're not understanding what's going on anyway, in a sense. So I've seen a lot of parents it's such a big kind of sticking point that they end up putting the kids in school so that they'll learn English. And I just want to be like, please stop. Like, I can't, there are too many out there to talk to, but I hope the right ones will hear me, because don't do it. And you can back me on this or not, but I've been there myself. I know it's hurtful to us as the parent. I feel like there's a portion of like lack of patience on our part. There's a portion of like almost embarrassment, right? Like our child should know. There's a portion of like, how do I navigate this situation? And I don't know how to help them. I have been there. I have translated for my children. I have had to stand on the side of the pool yelling instructions in Spanish to my kid. So that they understood. I've had to pull my kids out of classes just because they weren't ready, and I was okay with that, because at the end of the day, and you'll tell me what you think about this, but at the end of the day, to me, what's most important is this, right? They can go to jiu-jitsu when they're seven. Not right now, right? No, when they're 3. They can go to soccer maybe in a year when they're ready. Children are acquiring language at all times, including that moment when you as a parent feel uncomfortable because your child doesn't understand or the coach feels a certain way about it. That's going to be on you what your priority is. But I will say, don't have a knee-jerk reaction of throwing your kid in school, even if that wasn't in your plans, because you're in a rush for the soccer coach to be able to understand, or for them to understand the soccer coach. Like, that's not, to me, that's not a good enough reason, because this is such a short phase. I tell parents all the time, it is so short-lived. And just such a simple decision like that can change the course of their entire bilingualism journey for the rest of their lives, truly. Just because we made the decision of they weren't speaking it fast enough, like, boom, let's flood them with it.
Right. It can derail them. And then my question would then be, how married are you to that extracurricular? How much of a priority is it that they're able to take their ballet class at 2.5 and 3 because their friends are all doing it? When you know in your heart that from a language standpoint, they're not ready for an English ballet class, and you know in your heart that it's like, for me, my priority has always been Spanish.
Same, right? Like, that's the same.
So I'm like, if I need to hold off on extracurriculars, I will. And we did. We did for a long time. We didn't do any extracurriculars.
I actually held off on them because I didn't want my kids to be
exposed to
English input. So other way around, absolutely.
That's what I did too. I was like, I don't want an extracurricular. It's not Spanish input. But then I sought out things that were in Spanish, or if that's not available to you, well, hey, Bilinguitos has extracurriculars in Spanish, which is one of the reasons why I did that, was that, like, we have a ballet class in Spanish. We have music classes in Spanish. But that aside, there too many birds out here. There are definitely ways that you could, like, if that jujitsu class, too many cars over there. If that jujitsu class wasn't the right setup because you weren't able to, like, coach your kid on the sideline, or it was causing issues, or the coach was getting frustrated, then ditch it. Go find something else. It's not that you can't put your kid in an extracurricular. There's going to be ones that lend itself well. I put my daughter in soccer starting at 4. And she was ready at that point. I didn't have to be on the sideline saying anything, but I still kind of was. Like, if she wasn't fully getting what the directions were, I'd be like, Ani, quieren que tú hagas blah, blah, blah.
Nobody, by the way, has ever had an issue with me.
No one cares.
I want to point that out because I feel like parents, it's a lot. Same with a park. You take your kids to the park and they're not speaking
You feel
English.
self-conscious.
Yes, you feel self-conscious, and the kids are like, I don't know what you're saying. And I think as a parent, like, we take that so too hard, and it's it makes us doubt ourselves so hard. But I want to say, is what I want to say. Like, I've been there. I've stood next to my child and translated in the oddest situations, in extracurriculars, by the pool, in a jiu-jitsu class or whatever. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what's your priority. Like,
right. You
know what I mean? What is,
if the extracurricular is such a stumbling block because of the language aspect, ditch it. Bye. There's going to be their whole life to do all those things. So we purposely avoided extracurriculars in English. Like I said, my example is kind of our extreme. We have gone so extreme, but it's paid off, so I don't really care. And then when we did finally start doing extracurriculars, if it was going to be a big stumbling block, or if there's going to be an issue with the fact that she's Spanish dominant, then that's not the place for us. So,
well, Cynthia's saying, I understand that my son has a diagnosis that obligates me to keep him active to see if he starts to decline physically. Then the question is, are there situations or classes of such sort that you can be, like, stay closer to him, that will allow you to
something else,
translate for him, just like bridge him to the other side, if you will, right? We'll have to see what she says. But
sorry, my son came out to show me his child.
Oh, thank you. So I think that's important. I think we're all going to have, like, caveats and situations, but at the end of the day, I always think where there's a will, there's a way, right? And I think that this is one of those things. It's like, we just have to remember our priorities, and we just have to, and then maybe that not everybody's priority is Spanish. Maybe the priority is the ballet, or maybe the priority is the soccer or whatever. But I just don't recommend, it's such a short phase that I don't recommend making any
Drastic language.
drastic long-term decisions on such a short-lived thing.
Yes.
I always tell people, be patient, trust your child, trust the process, because even in those situations, they're constantly absorbing the language, they're acquiring the language, even if they're not speaking it yet.
Mm-hmm. And it really is just short lived. It just takes perspective to know that, because in the moment it does feel like your whole world. And I did want to mention this because I just ran up the stairs. Now I'm tired. um, a lot of times the questions that we get, I'm sure that this is the case for you too, of the but what about English fear, come from parents of 2-year olds, 2.5-year olds, like really young. And at that point, you can't really even fathom them having a lot of English exposure because it's just not there. And so if you're like, I'm not introducing English, we are committed to only speaking Spanish. So what
What's
about
going to
English?
happen?
Yeah. And it does feel far-fetched to think, no, they really will get it, even without you introducing it.
Yeah.
But it's just so young. Like, don't worry. If your kid is 2, just enjoy that. Like, enjoy being in that
That
state.
bubble, because it bursts real quick, I will
It
tell you. And
does.
it is really bittersweet. I talk about it all the time. It's really bittersweet when it happens. I remember now my 3-year-old, who only spoke Spanish until like 2 months ago, is like saying sentences in English to my husband. And I'm a little sad about it. Like, I tell parents, like, that doesn't come back. They're never only going to know Spanish again, ever in their
Mm-hmm.
lives. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like that little bubble you were in bursts, and the reality of like, oh, not only did they learn it, but now they're not speaking back to me in Spanish. Like, then those realities like hit you in the face really fast, and it takes over at the speed of light. Like, because they've been because they've been acquiring it the whole time, right?
Right.
Whether you like to
Yeah,
accept it or not,
silently.
they have
Yeah.
been. And so once they take off, it's like, where was this the whole time? And I did all these things, and I didn't even need to. I didn't even need to get scared or freak out or worry. And
Yeah. And it
yeah,
really is. It's so much easier to do bilingual parenting when they only speak one language. So it sounds funny, but like it is. It's so much easier to bilingual parent when they only speak Spanish, because there's no question. Like, it's obvious which language I'm going to use with them. It's obvious which language they're going to respond to me in, because they only have Spanish. So when English does get introduced, it just adds a layer of complexity. Some people have had that from the get-go, but for kids who only get Spanish exposure from the early years, when English does come in, it just adds a layer of complexity. And we're not against English, like we said earlier.
absolutely.
I
We're
love English.
strategically delaying the dominance shift, is what we're doing.
Exactly. So that's nothing against English. We're using English right now. English is my dominant language. English is my native language. So I don't have anything against English. I just know from a strategic, like you said, strategic standpoint,
What happens?
English comes so quickly and so hard. So I have nothing against my kids speaking English. But I know that if I don't prioritize Spanish right now, then who will and when? So yeah,
Yep, yep,
fully yes.
absolutely. Yeah. Did I leave anything out that you wanted to talk about?
I wanted to mention that about like families with 2-year-olds being like so worried about what's going to happen when they go to kindergarten. That's 3 whole years away. Um, Again, I get it from a theoretical questioning standpoint and not having the perspective of later on. I get the question, but don't worry.
And I also want to say, like, because I think we've all been there, right? Like, you're in your bubble and you feel like your child's not really playing with any kids yet, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, maybe taking them to story time, maybe not. Like, they're really not having that, like, almost need to be outside in a way, and need to be
Mm-hmm.
with other children, as like you imagine, like, as they're growing, you're like, they need to be with other kids. You just put that pressure on yourself. They need to socialize, or whatever it is
Yeah.
that we all think. And so, or they're not in extracurriculars yet, and all of those things. As they grow, that exposure grows and grows. So whatever you thought of
Happens.
2 is not reality. Like,
Right.
do not forget, it's gonna
Right.
change.
Yeah,
Like,
it all happens organically. And I know that families, even in monolingual contexts, they have that like mom guilt, like, oh my gosh, I'm stay-at-home mom, my kid's with me all the time, like should I be sending him to daycare just from the social aspect? And like, actually no, you don't need to, even in a monolingual context.
yeah,
That's just a natural part of motherhood, is like thinking we're not doing enough, thinking we're not exposing
about
our kids to
everything.
it.
Yeah.
Like, so it just doubles with the bilingual factor where we're like, well, this and that. But truly, like I said, with my extreme example of my daughter, like getting very minimal English input and still learning English, um, it just works itself out. It really does.
It's unreal. Like it's truly, I mean, and I tell you all the time, like there you are. I see families, right, that have both parents that have the luck that both parents speak Spanish and they speak Spanish to each other. And I'm like, what an amazing setup. And they're like, I'm making my husband switch so that, and I'm like, no, I have a husband that speaks English and I wish I could speak Spanish to him and he could speak it to my kids. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. It makes me,
Yes.
I mean, it makes me sad. It's like so unnecessary, and it's almost like on this stage is like almost underappreciated, right? Like when they're little and they're only
Mm-hmm.
speaking Spanish and we want to rush through it and fix it, and it's such a flex. Like what an amazing job you did that now your kids are only speaking Spanish in a world that's about to flood them in English quite
Right.
soon, really.
Right.
So I try to tell as many parents as I catch, like, please don't switch. Don't do anything different. Raise your kids in Spanish because bilingualism is a byproduct of that, truly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, raise your kids in Spanish with as much as you can and with everything you can because bilingualism happens on its own. I mean, people think all the time, like, oh, I got to raise my kids bilingually, and that means they need both. No, if you want to raise your kids bilingually, you do the work in
The
Spanish and the
world,
world does the English.
they are bilingual kids because their world is bilingual, not because they're getting two languages from their parents. It doesn't have to be the
No,
way.
absolutely not.
And
And
it's
I,
go ahead.
no, that was it. That was
And
it.
then just to recenter, since it's about homeschooling, like
Mhm.
the families who do have that fear, like, oh, but what about kindergarten? And like, we only speak Spanish at home. How will they be ready for kindergarten? Most of the time, it doesn't end up being a concern. It's fine. But especially in the context of homeschooling, we don't have a hard cutoff where we're like, well, they have to be enough
By
independent by a certain time, or they have to be reading. Like, because I do know that there's been families that have been like, oh, I mean, but it's almost like it was independent of the bilingualism. But then the child is like behind in their reading in school and
But
they're
again, it's
having
the
to get
same thing as parents,
supplements.
no? I think as parents, it's como que we're always gonna have something to doubt ourselves about, especially as moms, siento.
Yeah,
And in any context,
right.
right? In the bilingual or monolingual context, like as even more as homeschooling parents and even more as bilingual parents. O sea, you just keep adding layers of reasons to doubt ourselves in a sense. And
Yes.
so it's like we're gonna ask ourselves those questions no matter what, siento.
Yeah. And with each kid being individuals, every kid is different.
También.
So there's always going to be nuance, and like the person that's going to be like, oh, well, we did that and it didn't work for us because this and that. There's going to be nuance in every single thing. Like each kid individually is different and stuff. But as a whole, I do stand behind what we've been saying here. Like you can go full Spanish or long term homeschool, and
No, no worry.
our kids are going to be not just fine, they're going to be amazing because
They're
of
gonna be
it.
great.
Yeah.
Exacto, exacto. Absolutely. Because we didn't talk about, we talked about like I feel like the linguistic benefits, but like we didn't talk about the fact that these are children that are going to graduate and they're going to have two perspectives on the world. They're going to have um, full proficiency in both languages, right? They're not going to be kids that like speak Spanish. They're going to be kids that can read it and write it, and they can function in other countries
Like if they
at
wanted to
the
go and
level of
do
the other children.
right, if they wanted to go do university in another, like in Mexico, where you
Yeah,
could do
they're
it.
going to be functioning at the level of all this. There's not going to be any gaps in that, and that doesn't mean that they can't go to a university here if they wish to.
Mhm.
But they do have the possibility that other kids most likely won't have, which is to do it elsewhere, or which is to go work at massive global markets.
And if they do have gaps, because there's going to be gaps somewhere, like in any bilingual, there's gaps of some sort, but they're going to be so adaptable because of it, because they'll have had to like
A
self-teach
whole
all
life.
the English stuff. Like they got all the base, but they're going to just be like very adaptable, very ready to, think on their feet and adapt to new situations and learn new things and transfer skills. And it's just providing like such a good basis for them just as productive society members, like just as good
Absolutely.
humans,
I'm
regardless of
very,
like,
very, I'm very excited to see as we go through this because our kids are the same age.
yeah.
So I feel like I'm super excited as they grow to kind of watch them and watch how everything develops, for us with our intensity about Spanish and whatever. Um, yeah, and I want to watch them grow in the language and see how, English does come in, because I already see those moments happen where it's like, how does my son know how to count to 300 in English? I didn't teach him that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
truly didn't. And I'm like, who taught him that? Where did he learn it? Where did he hear it? Like, I have no idea, and it still blows my mind.
Yeah.
But he definitely, when he adds, he does it in he's like cinco seis, and I'm
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
yes,
The
we
internal,
still got it.
the internal dialogue. Yeah, definitely. And you can, that's rare, honestly. It really is rare for almost 6.5-year-olds to their internal dialogue still being in Spanish. My daughter's best friends, she still plays with them in complete Spanish. I don't even know if they realize there's an option to change to English because they just don't even, yeah, exactly. And that's rare. Like when she's playing on her own, all of that internal dialogue, all of her, like, her acting things out, it's all in Spanish. And I'm just like thankful for that because it's rare. And I'm trying to preserve that as long as possible. Because, like I said at the beginning, they're eventually going to be dominant in English, and that's okay. We are just trying to help their Spanish skills stay as very sharp as they can and continue to grow and not just kind of leave them like estancado, like, okay, solamente sabías hasta el primer grado, las cosas del primer grado, y
Right.
de ahí ya no aprendiste nada español. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that, like, I what you're saying, it's like the internal dialogue, and like also, I mean, I find myself doing my absolute best to provide my children with, like you said, like extend that bubble as much as possible with like play groups, only in
Mm-hmm.
Spanish, a
Mm-hmm.
co-op that's only in Spanish. And I talk about it too. Like, I've had to make those things because there weren't
Mm-hmm.
here, and that's how important it is to me that my children watch other children that are homeschooled learning in Spanish like they are, that my children play with other kids that speak Spanish. Like, some families have it, like you have some family down the road, that I don't have anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
even my husband speaks English. And so I really had to fabricate those opportunities in a sense for them. And I'll gladly do it because I know how huge peer influence is. So I'll gladly do it for my kids. But
Yeah, we
if
didn't.
you have that built in, like, please take advantage of it, use it, like, aprovechenlo, you know what I mean?
We didn't even touch on that, like about how far out of our way we've had to go in this whole Spanish only homeschooling to create those opportunities and stuff. Like, yeah, so like we did touch on it being not always the convenient path. And don't shy away from that. Like, just because it's not convenient doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. I've done the same, like starting up Spanish only playgroup, Spanish only, kind of like a nature co-op type thing. The electives, the
Yeah,
extracurriculars
your
that I run on
extracurricular, yeah,
Linguist. So I'm like,
yeah,
I want her to take a ballet class. I don't care about ballet that much to then go and enroll her in a ballet school down the street, which is going to be extra English input. It's kind of expensive and all the things. Ooh, Spanish immersion ballet that we can do from home. Love it. But you do have to go out of your way to find or
no doubt,
create the opportunities, but it's worth
no
it. So.
doubt. And it comes down to what I said in the beginning, right? You have to set the expectations for yourself
Mhm.
of what level of Spanish you want your children to have at the end of the day, how far you're willing to go for that,
Mhm.
and truly make that decision and have conviction in it, because it does come with so many factors,
Mhm.
and a lot of inconveniences in a sense, So it's not the easy road, but I feel in my heart it's
Worth
like, I can't see it any other way. Like, I can't see myself teaching my children in English. So this is like the only way I can fathom homeschooling in a sense. Um, and I just hope that other parents will just feel more comfortable, especially
supported.
parents that don't speak English. My
Mhm.
goodness gracious. Like, I really hope they'll feel more comfortable teaching their children in Spanish and know that it's gonna be okay. Like, they're going to learn those things. Like, confidently teach them in your language, in the home language. Like, don't feel the need and the pressure to switch and to kind of go out of your way the other way, because what's
Right,
gonna end up
right.
happening is you're gonna end up with children that are not. It's like sending them to school at that point, but even worse, because you're the parent that spoke Spanish to them and now you're speaking English, and they're like, well, that's much easier. Let's just do that. It's just not, man, it's just not worth it.
Unnecessary. Yeah.
Not necessary. Yeah. Make a decision, set your expectation, and go for it. That's
Mhm.
my that's my thing. I'm so excited to see our kids grow up and just I continue to do this.
Well,
And with this, like with this generation of moms, if you want to call them, or this like community of moms that's starting to do the same thing, it gets me really excited because I want to see what that does. I want them to see what that does to the bilingualism of their children. Like I want them to see what it does to the minority language in their home. ¿Me
well, it's
entiendes?
almost like we're like, I haven't seen a case study of it. I haven't seen a Spanish immersion homeschool child from K through 12.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it. I've seen it in like schools, and it's great, especially if they're being also supported at home. That same target like is
Exacto.
working at home.
Which I feel like is rare too, si estás de
It,
acuerdo conmigo, porque ya se van a la casa and then they're like, oh, another thing, they're like, well, they speak Spanish in school, so I speak English then because ¿cómo lo va a aprender? Y yo digo, oh my gosh, they're speaking English to their peers all day in school. I
Spanish immersion
on that.
schools are so much like any language immersion school is so much more English than parents are.
So it's just like, no, don't do that either. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited, and I hope for a lot of these moms that they see those updates and those benefits too right away, and they're stoked on what they're doing because it's huge. It's not convenient, that's for sure. It's different, and it's like everything that's different. It's a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's scary when there's no like a proof of concept like example that you can point to and be like, oh, so and so's kid.
Look
So
what
it's
they
kind of
did.
nice. So anyone whose kids are younger than ours can at least be like, well, I have the support and like example or whatever, and like I can at least see that someone's doing it. But for us, we're like, I can't point to a 12th grader that I know that was homeschooled only in Spanish. I can't do it.
I mean, and even, I mean, like you said, even dual immersion schools or even full immersion schools, they turn into dual immersion school as a
Yeah,
child
they
approaches high
switch.
school because they have to fit into a system, correct?
Right.
Like that's the other thing. That's the part that people don't consider. They think, oh, they start layering in English, so I must have to start doing the same thing. And they're doing it because there are requirements put on the
Mm-hmm.
schools, not
Yeah.
because that's
And they're
what makes
funding, like the funding for the
exactly,
school and like college
exactly
entrance exams and all the things. Like they don't have the luxury of
the
tailoring
choice.
things to every
Exactly,
kid. So yeah,
exactly.
so I am excited. We'll have to do this again in 12 years and talk about all that we've learned.
We'll be old ladies, that's for sure. Somebody asked you what classes that you offer would you recommend for me, says Cynthia.
I told you that it doesn't show me the chat.
Oh, okay. She said what classes that you offer would you recommend for me? I don't know what you have coming up.
Yeah, DM me and tell me about your family, and I'm happy to connect you.
Yeah, that would be cool. All right, gracias por platicar our wild Friday night. Thank you for chatting about this. I will have the YouTube video of this for anybody that's just joining or that missed some of it. I will post
Who wants
that
to share?
tomorrow.
If you're like, ooh, a friend of mine needs to hear this.
Yeah,
share.
That's my main thing. It's like just you're gonna be okay. Your kids are gonna be okay. You're gonna be blown away by how much your kids can do.
Take it a year at a time. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed thinking of 8th grade in Spanish. Okay, well you're not there yet. So
Yeah,
that's
your child is 3. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's the case for monolingual homeschoolers, just in general. That's a theme all the time. Is like, I'm overwhelmed. I can't. Okay, but you're in kindergarten right now. Like your kid is in kindergarten. Take it a
you
year
don't know
at a
what's gonna
time.
happen.
You grow with your child. More resources become available as the years go on, and like that's been the case for me. I knew I wanted to homeschool from the beginning, but 6.5 years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, what's even around for me to do in Spanish? I mean, I'm gonna have to create something. And now I'm using a curriculum that I love. It's like no brainer. It's all in Spanish and it's so easy. But it wasn't an option when I was originally, or at least I didn't know of it, or it wasn't big. So don't be overwhelmed with like the future. Just take it a year at a time. Know that you have support, like you have like
You have these ladies doing
yeah.
it, and we're always here.
We're here, and there's plenty of people that have been, tuning in and on and off, or just in general, like we interact with in our Instagrams that like are doing this too. So you're not alone, and you got this.
And if you need resources, we're happy to provide them. If this is something you're interested in, you've been thinking about, you're considering for your child, we have, we can send you resources. There are full curricula out there. There are curricula from kindergarten all the way through, I want to say, high school.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to translate anything,
Mm-hmm.
make anything up, figure it out. There are resources now, a lot more than there used to be, for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you can rely on those the same way you would rely on the good and the beautiful. You know
Yeah,
what
and
I
all the
mean?
ones that are
So
big in the English.
yes,
Exactly.
yes.
But yeah,
So
for real, people can DM me. I answer DMs. So reach out.
bueno, te mando un beso. Mil gracias por platicar.
Yay, gracias. This was fun.
Thank you, everyone.
Buenas noches.